The enemy within, the revolution against America. 2020 has seen a swift rise in anti American activity in the United States, including large peaceful protests against police brutality, overtly organized and funded by the Black Lives Matter organization and its allied group networks. Large cities have simultaneously experienced violent riots, burning, and looting of entire businesses and local communities. The revolution against America has transitioned to a new phase as these groups have even seized a 7-block territory in the city of Seattle, declaring it an autonomous zone initially called the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, or CHAZ. Stick with us as we look into the CHAZ and what it means for America. The actors behind the protests and the violence are, at their core, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and other aligned groups following Marxist, Leninist, Maoist, revolutionary ideology. Author Jeff Nyquist assesses that a revolution has already begun and no decisive counter-revolutionary actions have been ordered in his recent letter to the Americans who are on their knees. Quote, "Why has this happened?" Nyquist says, "Because we have been psychologically and linguistically disarmed." His example is the oath of allegiance of federal officials is to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. But if we refuse to acknowledge the existence of enemies, if we cannot name our enemies, no defense will be possible. And this is the one thing above all that has been forbidden. We are not allowed to name our enemies. This is the raw essence of linguistic and psychological disarmament. Add to this a process in which America's enemies have flooded into the government itself, and now, when mob violence has been deployed on a massive scale, the country finds itself totally unprepared, disoriented, and defenseless, unquote. Nyquist goes on to define the process of psychological and linguistic disarmament as the current events predict the demise of our republic. We have been, he quotes, intellectually disarmed, and now the process has advanced from the realm of ideas to street violence. If the process is allowed to continue, Americans of all races and beliefs will be slaughtered when the foreign enemy moves his missiles, armies, and fleets into action. At present, our economy is under attack on a number of fronts. Law and order is being stripped from us. First, the police will be defunded. Second, the revolution will defund the U.S. military. Third, the Chinese and Russians will bomb and invade the country, unquote. These current outcomes are being incubated in and created by a highly sophisticated network of funding, digital technology, new social media capabilities, and even legacy media technology that is made up of foreign government, international and domestic non-governmental organizations, and non-elected or elected U.S. political actors. We assess the network as fundamentally a Marxist, Leninist, Maoist organization in its ideology, its cultural revolution strategy and tactics, but it's highly evolved into a flat, agile, highly distributed, modern operation across the spectrum of what China calls unrestricted warfare. It presents a grave threat to the United States and any other Republican and Democratic countries. This situation compels us to drop what we're currently doing and step into the breach to solve the immediate priority of identifying our current technological challenges, preventing adequate defense and offense against this threat. My guest today infiltrated the Seattle self-declared nation of CHAZ just days ago, exposing the illegal effort for what it is. Jack Posobiec is a journalist for One American News Network, a U.S. Navy intelligence officer, and a China expert. My friend Jack Posobiec, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. Appreciate coming back on, Colonel.
Well, I appreciate you joining us today. I know you've been really busy and traveling a lot. I have to confess though, I was right. I was guessing that you were probably there on the ground in the Capitol Hill zone there that's once named the CHAZ, now the CHOP or whatever it is, the territory that's been seized by and occupied by a conglomeration of armed militants and peaceful protesters against police brutality. How was it?
Yeah, that's right. So there were a few posts that I was doing on social media throughout the week, and I actually do have a pretty good subsource network there in Seattle that I built up over the past few years. And what I did was I was posting those videos on Twitter all week, and then by about Friday, yeah, so Friday morning is when I actually arrived on the scene myself and began filming and conducting essentially collection operations on the ground while within that zone itself. I maintained myself masked the entire time. I made sure to keep sunglasses on, and I changed my outfit every once in a while, so just that different colors, different jackets, so that if people could had started to get sort of a sense of, hey, who's this guy filming all over the place, it would look like different people. So we ended up spending 72 hours in there both day and night, and the fact that we were there during the daytime and during the nighttime helps to actually explain both sides of what's going on in this region, and it also helps to explain why so much of the media is only getting half the story. They're only reporting half of what's going on there.
And that's why it's critically important for my viewers and the viewers of One American News Network and any American citizen that wants to hear the truth and the facts in as unbiased a way as possible that you did this. And I commend you and your team at OAN for taking on this operation. And that is, but the reason is because the mainstream press in the United States of America, aren't they actually lying about what's really happening on the ground and putting out a version of propaganda that says, hey, this is peaceful, it's like a love fest? And even the politicians that have been elected in the Seattle area and Washington State, some of them are going along with it. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I won't know if I'd say that they're lying as so much as they're spreading half truth. So there is a chimera effect going on as far as Capitol Hill goes. And so if you only go there during the daytime or during some of the declared events, yes, you're going to see a street festival atmosphere. You're going to see food. You're going to see people giving impassioned speeches, protesting about change they'd like to see in their community. That's all true. But the problem is that's not the entire picture. North Korea, Kim Jong Un would love to invite those journalists to show them exactly what parts of North Korea he'd like them to see, because that's exactly the type of level of coverage that I'm sure North Korea would like. No, once you start to peel back the layers and start investigating what's actually going on critically, you start to see the cracks and fissures in the situation. One thing that I noted that I happened to be there for when it actually took place was there was a break-in of an auto shop that was just down the road from Capitol Hill. That's part of Capitol Hill neighborhood, just past where the barricade is. There was a break-in in there and an attempted arson. But because the police aren't showing up in Capitol Hill, the owner of the place and his family ended up holding the thief. Well, when the people in the Capitol Hill zone heard about that, a speaker, the guy who was speaking this night, it was Sunday night, gave out the shout and said, "Hey, they're holding someone at gunpoint at the card. I think it's called card attender." So then a mob of about 200 people rushed down the street, bolting at full speed towards this place. And I've got the entire thing on footage. I've got all of this documented. They then start shaking the chains, rattling the fence of the auto lot. They break down the fence and are able to forcibly enter the auto lot, and they're only held off by the owner is standing there unarmed. His son is standing there with an AR-15. Everybody is very tense. And then finally, cooler heads prevailed before things got any worse. But you're seeing this type of mob justice that's going on. Then the thief ends up escaping, running down this guy Raz, who's kind of set himself up as a petty warlord of the area, cocks his gun, starts chasing after the guy at high speed. He's eventually caught and held at gunpoint on the hood of a car. The mob is now surrounding him, trying to see how does the mob deal mob justice to an accused thief. They eventually start beating him. Somebody comes in and starts beating him, and then he is able to escape. The auto shop owner is talking about that they've lost possibly $5,000 in cash, as well as the keys to some of their vehicles and a vault key. So we're waiting to see whether or not they take any action. But the owner says this is complete lawlessness. The police aren't responding. You're seeing criminal activity that's going on at night here. You're seeing anarchy. You're seeing mob justice. And the city has completely allowed these things to happen. So Mayor Jody Durkin, she's absolutely complicit in this situation. One thing that I also keyed in while I was there was that those barricades being set up the way they were completely blocking traffic from the area. What did that mean? Well, I was there twice. People had to be brought out of the zone, and ambulances called in because they had passed out. One was, it seemed like had blacked out due to combining alcohol and drugs. Another one was a similar situation. The problem, though, then became that first responders, EMTs, or fire response were not able to get into that zone. There are no serious medics in there. There's no medical professionals. There's no one who's able to provide that first response. And anyone who's been in the military or had any type of first responder training knows that in some cases, those first few moments, those first few minutes can mean a difference between life and death. And yet the way they had set up these barricades, they weren't even allowing emergency personnel to get in. So this is an absolute tinderbox, and I've called for it to be shut down before someone is seriously hurt.
Yeah, I agree with you. You mentioned you talked to the owner of the auto facility or business or whatever
Yeah.
it was, and that owner's upset. I've seen reporting to that in that regard too, but not from the mainstream media, only from non-legacy media like myself or OANN, which is almost mainstream. I think it's mainstream, but nobody else is reporting that, and they're actually reporting the opposite, that businesses are opening and thriving. Were you able to get in contact with any other business owners or residents of the area during your
Well, you can actually
investigation?
go and there's a lot of people that aren't willing to talk publicly because they are in fear of this mob that's going on there, and the fact that, if you speak out against them, they're going to come after you. This thing is not as peaceful as it sounds. Sure, everything's fine as long as you're going along with the mob, but the minute that you step out of line, they come at you. Just as one example, one story that I was able to cover was a Christian street preacher. So, anyone who spent time in a big city has seen a Christian street preacher before. They're in every city. They're there. They're on the side of the road. Sometimes they have a microphone and a little speaker, and they're preaching the word of God to the masses, right? And that's what they're doing. It's a free country, of course. That's perfectly allowed in the First Amendment. The Christian street preacher who came into Capitol Hill was attacked, was beaten. He had his phone stolen. He was put into a chokehold by one of the leaders of Portland Antifa, who happened to be on the scene. He was later drugged out. I got all of this on video, and I was able to speak to him afterwards. He said that this is not the United States of America, that they've taken our country away. They've rejected religious freedom there. You can go onto online in some of these anonymous chat rooms or chat boards like Reddit, for example. People are going on the Seattle Reddit and saying, local residents are saying that they want to move out. They're saying they don't feel safe without police in the area and knowing what goes on at night. They're saying they can't sleep because they're all night long. There's chanting and loud music happening. And so the residents of the area are very worried about what's going on, because the complete breakdown in the law of order, in the rule of law, the complete breakdown in law and order. It's a huge issue for if you're someone who, let's say you own a condo there, let's say you rent an apartment. Obviously that part of Seattle, downtown Seattle, is not that cheap. And there was even one guy commenting who said, even if I wanted to move, and he was saying this to local news, he said, even if I wanted to move, I wouldn't be able to, because how could I even get a moving truck in there right now? So he actually rented a hotel, and this is all in local news. Also, locally, we've seen the black clergy has come out against this. So leaders of the African American community now are coming out against the autonomous zone. One, Victoria Beach, actually even said, what does this have to do with Black Lives Matter? This is a circus. This is not something that is in line with what we were looking for in the first place. We want reform. We don't want to remove the police from our city. And Seattle, of course, has a black female police chief, and that's Carmen Best. And that Chief Best is someone that they've stood with, and they said they do have confidence in her to fix what's going on here. As we know, these various situations that have happened around the country, these haven't been issues in the city of Seattle. However, now pretty much everybody who has a grievance with the Seattle Police Department is coming out. And of course, we saw in the run-up to the Capitol Hill zone being set up, which I think the mainstream media, again, and I unfortunately would have to lump some conservative side of the aisle in that as well, that they're not showing the fact that the reason the police were ordered out of there in the first place was because of the violent protests of that police station from far left groups, from elements of Antifa and others, that led to a massive standoffs, the use of tear gas day after day. And so when you talk to people who have been organizers of that, they view this very much as won territory. They view this as a conquest. They view this as something that they've achieved in terms of an actual autonomous region within the city itself. And going around the area, you will see members of it armed. A lot of these guys, they're members of the local John Brown Gun Club. This is a socialist, a far anti-government, extreme organization. One of their members actually targeted an ICE facility in a terrorist attack last year in Tacoma Park, just down the road from Seattle. Firebombed it, ended up getting killed, shot and killed in the process. And so this is a very violent group that's in the area, that's operating in the area. We saw this guy, CHAZ, the petty warlord, handing out AR-15s from the trunk of his Tesla. He was caught on video doing that, just handing them out to random people. So when you've got guns, when you've got violence, when you've got mob justice, when you've got anarchy and the police standing down, you only have a recipe for bad things to happen.
Absolutely right, Jack. And, in the larger context of this, what appears to be a Maoist cultural revolution that's transitioning to a period of violence, which doesn't bode well for any country. I think our country will be able to withstand it and defend against it, but we're slowly getting our act together, but not quick enough. So I hope that happens. But in the larger context of this, you mentioned that other groups and other locations around the country, we've seen or heard that maybe this type of tactic and strategy is going to occur or has tried and failed. Are you hearing anything currently from your networks around the country of any more of these types of seizures?
What we saw so far on the ground in Seattle was that elements of Portland Antifa had actually driven up and were now reinforcing what was going on in Seattle. As far as other autonomous zones, probably the only one that's gotten any traction thus far is one in Philadelphia that's set up right near the Art Museum on Benjamin Franklin Parkway, though there's some differing opinions on this where it actually seems to be more like a homeless encampment. But far left groups and Antifa groups are trying to call it an autonomous zone when it's really more like a homeless encampment in a city park.
So what do you think about the challenges that we faced with the truth and the objective truth getting out about this? So the average American citizen, regardless of their race, color, creed, background, that believes in America, can defend themselves against this. And the first defense is knowledge, is being armed with knowledge. We can get the message to them, but the media, the mainstream press that's supposed to be free and and help guard against this kind of thing doesn't appear to be working for us. How can they change, or what do they need to do to change? I guess I even saw a Fox News reporter do a "It's all peaceful here in the Seattle Capitol Hill zone" report not long ago, which surprised me because I thought they were interested in fair and balanced truth.
Well, that's one of the main reasons why One American News and outlets like LifeZ, independent media outlets, are so important right now. The rise of social media being what it is. You've seen, of course, lots of attacks on One American News lately. We recently tried to be canceled by a college football team. Somebody wore a T-shirt or something. And the reason that independent journalism and independent outlets that are not tied to any power structure, whether it be any party or any company or corporation, is so important because it gives us the freedom to be able to do things like we did this past weekend, spend those 72 hours on the ground, be there day and night, show both sides of the story that the mainstream media doesn't want to show you. They're not going there at night. They're not spending the time putting themselves in danger. And I can understand why. I'm not going to ask them to put themselves in danger. But you have to understand that that's only one side of the story. And then, of course, having outlets like LifeZ, where we can come on and talk about these issues in a way that actually furthers the conversation and furthers getting our country to a point of understanding the challenges, the many challenges that we face right now, and working to solve them rather than engaging in some sort of petty contest between sides.
Yeah. One last question or set of questions, Jack, and you're exactly right on the media approach, and we need to help them help themselves and keep highlighting it and encourage folks to come see you all on One American News Network and follow you on Twitter at Jack Posobiec. And come to lifeset.com and see the Rob Maness show, or follow me at robmaness.com or at Rob Maness on Twitter. But I believe, based on only open source media and some human source intelligence, that foreign actors are at play here behind some of these groups,
Honestly,
namely China.
well, I
Where are
was
you?
on the ground. While I was on the ground, I definitely had the impression that if foreign actors wanted to get involved in something like the Capitol Hill zone, it would be incredibly easy for them to exploit what was going on there. And while I didn't see anybody, I did see a Chinese film crew at one point. I certainly didn't see anyone that seemed like they were participating that was from China. I do, and the reason I say that is because I speak fluent Mandarin. Was a China linguist, Mandarin linguist in the U.S. Navy. So when I hear somebody speaking Mandarin, my ears is sort of already attuned to that. And I didn't hear any of that while I was in there at the time, but it did occur to me that because the ends of these groups like Antifa are so combined with the same ends of the Chinese Communist Party. We see them lashing out at Hong Kong. We see them lashing out at India just last night. And so it would be very ripe for them to be able to usurp one of those events and to actually be supplying them with further ability to create division and discord in the United States. And that, of course, is their strategic goal.
Yeah, I agree with you on that too, and I believe that our intelligence agencies should be reoriented to focus on the Chinese Communist Party and its government the way we did the old Soviet Union in the Cold War, so that we can detect that if it and see if it's actually happening. Do you think the Chinese Communist Party is influencing the lack of coverage for the mainstream media outlets? Is that possible?
I could speculate, but I don't really have any evidence to point one way or the other on that. But I would say that it's very interesting that the mainstream media will spend so much time trying to tie President Trump to anything that goes on with an individual police situation or a local policing issue, where we've seen the CCP be bad actors when it came to the cover up of COVID-19. We've seen the CCP be bad actors when it comes to the actual crackdown in Hong Kong. this new flare up with India that's going on right now. We know that they've infiltrated in many cases our universities. It seems just every day you can turn on the, go to the Department of Justice website and you'll see a new indictment of another professor that is involved with a Chinese spy ring. So our academia has been absolutely infiltrated by this. They're stealing our secrets, both proprietary, commercial, and military. And why the media doesn't treat them as the threat that they rightfully are has always been perplexing to me.
It is perplexing, and what we can do on our part here at LifeSet is we will continue to push out the truth and factual information and support news organizations like yours and OAN that do that, sir. And we appreciate you coming on. Any contact information I left out for where people can find y'all that you'd like to add, Jack?
Oh, just always go to oann.com, One American News Network. You can find us there. We're also available on Roku, Cloud TV, and as well as Verizon and DirecTV.
All right. Well, thank you, my friend. I appreciate your work and keep doing a great job.
Thanks so much, Phil.
I'd like to thank my friend Jack Masoviak for joining us today to discuss what he uncovered in the CHAZ and what this type of seizing of American territory and declaration of independence within our borders can mean, not just to the citizens there, but to the cultural revolution and its transitioning to violence that is currently happening on a massive scale across this country. This is the first in a series of The Enemy Within. Until next week's episode, this is Rob Mann.